it took for America to see the brutal murdering of another human being. George Floyd wasn't the first person to ever die under someone's brutalness and lack of empathy. In that moment, people got it and said, no more. We will have this no more. When there's tragedy, you've got to look for what's the hope. The murder of George Floyd, the pandemic with all the bodies, people not being able to be with their families, being quarantined, all of that pain. If you're a believer, and I'm a believer, you know that on the other side is goodness and hope.
In the middle of a global pandemic, the horrific events of George Floyd happened and the world came to a screeching halt and made everybody look. When we looked for help, for direction, it was AACUC and Renee that were there. There was no more time to leave things unsaid.
We were talking about what happened with George Floyd and how angry we were and how helpless we felt.
AACUC brought so many workers across race, across ethnicity, across age, across gender, and really talked emotionally and deeply about how this impacted our work and our mission. And that was truly remarkable.
I feel like Martin Luther King. I have a dream. The dream is that we don't have to have that conversation, that we are truly living the people helping people motto. Credit unions are uniquely positioned to lead the United States in eradicating racism. Executives used to pass by one another and they'd give them the nod. And the nod in the black culture is you see somebody black and you're in a white situation and you say, we'll meet later.
I spent a long career going to meetings where I was the only person of color. When you saw someone of color, you really wanted to talk to them.
A group of people started meeting at Hogate's during the Governmental Affairs Conference.
We began to talk about, why does this have to end? Why don't we do something where we can come together from time to time, all of us?
And in doing so, the AACUC was born.
I was elected as the first president, and it scared me to death because I had no idea what would be next. The initial vision was just to get to know other African American professionals in the credit union movement.
Diversity and inclusion is something that we knew we needed to do, and we had to do it first ourselves.
We were diversity and inclusion before it got popular.
Out of over 5,000 credit unions, we probably only have 165 African American CEOs that we can document at this time. If you want to make good business decisions, you have to be more diverse. In 2019, pre-pandemic, we had 5 leagues that belonged to the AACUC. But in 2020, Caroline Willard and John Brysakis went to the leagues and said, we've got to get behind this.
I was sitting on a league president call and I put out a challenge. I said, we have to do something that will show the world that this credit union movement cares about diversity, that we care about addressing systemic racism. And within 24 hours, I think we had 31 leagues step up and say, I'm in.
When they told me, I was quite frankly speechless. Again, 5 credit union leagues in 2019 and 2020, we have them all? Who does that? These league presidents, they don't look like me, but they supported AACUC because they're trying to be better. They're trying to make sure that there is equity, and that just warms my heart. We all have the same heart. So thank you. Many of the leagues reached out to us at AACUC to have us help lead those conversations.
You were comfortable being uncomfortable.
But uncomfortable is what AACUC does really, really well.
And I think that was one of the big gifts of AACUC and Renee's leadership.
And they're shining a spotlight on that with grace and with a lot of room for love.
Having conversations that are difficult to have, that's kind of my superpower. As we get into 2030, 2040, the landscape of the United States is going to change. We want to make sure that the credit union movement isn't left behind. It's not a dinosaur. Out of what happened, Commitment to Change, Credit Unions Unite Against Racism initiative was born. The credit union system rallied around AACUC in that moment.
At that moment is when their mission came into realization for credit unions, for leagues, for CUNA, for the entire credit union movement in a way that probably no one wanted or expected, but we needed it. And mission met moment for AACUC, and they delivered.
AACUC is poised right now to open doors and open dialogue. We're going to point back to these days and say that's when it all started. The opportunity, has met the preparation, and those two coming together are very, very powerful.
The AACUC has been built on people who were strong and courageous. They walked into the room and they were the only Black people there. AACUC founders knew that this moment would come. They groomed me to be here. There's no opportunity better than now to show the world what we can do and how we can do it. Credit unions were born out of adversity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a moment, it's a movement. Commitment to Change, Credit Unions Unite Against Racism is here to stay. We're gonna make it happen. That's what I see for credit unions.